Number 7. Swahili's Pedraza Rodriguez and Melissa Aquino Arias. From August to September of 2017, 2 women were accused of carrying out 3 separate bank robberies, one of which they committed while dressed as nuns. Swahili's Pedraza Rodriguez of New Haven, Connecticut, and Melissa Aquino Arias of the Dominican Republic attempted their first heist on August the 28th when they targeted the branch of Citizens Bank in Tannersville, Pennsylvania. The 2 women, one of whom was armed with a handgun, entered the building while donning nuns' habits and immediately demanded cash from the bank's employees. An alarm was subsequently triggered, prompting the robbers to flee without collecting any money. Rodriguez and Arias then plotted 2 additional robberies, both of which were perpetrated in New Jersey. The first occurred in late September of 2017 at the Spencer Savings Bank in Garfield. The women, dressed in headscarves, successfully robbed the bank while holding the tellers at gunpoint. On October the 15th, they descended on an NVE bank in Teaneck for their final robbery attempt. They initially inquired about opening an account with the bank, but were soon recognized by an employee as the alleged Garfield robbers. The workers contacted the police and the women fled the scene, but they were taken in custody later that day. Number 6. Sandee Core. A registered nurse from California performed a string of bank robberies over the course of 2 months in 2014. Following Sandee Core's widely publicized crime spree, the FBI gave her the nickname the Bombshell Bandit. She'd incurred a substantial amount of debt in the years leading up to the robberies. Since November of 2010, Core had developed a gambling habit. After traveling to Las Vegas with her cousin for her 21st birthday, she started planning monthly trips to Vegas and subsequently got involved with a variety of moneylenders who bankrolled her worsening addiction. With mortgage payments to make and exorbitant gambling debts to pay off, Core's financial situation continued to deteriorate at the beginning of 2014. She ultimately resorted to robbing a bank after a loan shark threatened to hurt her family in the event that she was unable to pay what she owed to them. The first robbery occurred in May of 2014 at a bank in Valencia, when Core outfitted herself in a blue tracksuit, a pair of oversized sunglasses, and a wig. She handed the teller a note that stated she would detonate a bomb if the worker failed to comply with her demands. Core made off with $21,200 during her first heist, which would be a larger sum than those obtained during any of the other 3 robberies to which she'd eventually pleaded guilty. She was finally caught by police in late July of 2014 after robbing a bank in St. George, Utah. She led officers on a high-speed chase that spanned multiple states and ultimately came to a stop in Nevada. Core was sentenced to 66 months in prison for her crimes and was also ordered to pay fines that amounted to $250,000. Number 5. Iconic Facey. A woman by the name of Iconic Facey was arrested in connection to a robbery at the Bank Core South branch in Gulfport, Mississippi. In March of 2019, Facey, aged 37, walked into the bank completely unarmed and handed one of the tellers a note demanding cash. She managed to get away with an unspecified amount of money, but the bank's employees were able to provide law enforcement officials with detailed descriptions of the robber during the ensuing investigation. The workers recounted that Facey looked as if she'd recently undergone plastic surgery to her cheeks, as they seemed to have been artificially enhanced in some way. Multiple tellers recognized Facey from a photo lineup shown to them by police, and the woman was consequently arrested at George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston, Texas. The suspect had returned to the United States following a brief trip to Mexico, where it's believed she'd used the stolen money to fund further surgical alterations to her face. Authorities learned that Facey had previously robbed an Alabama bank in 2008 and was then convicted under her birth name, Jimmy Maurice Lewis. For that crime, Lewis had served 51 months in federal prison, after which she legally changed her name to Iconic Facey. Following her second robbery, Facey was sentenced to the maximum of 15 years behind bars. Number 4. Samantha Wyatt. The U.S. bank in Dillsboro, Indiana was robbed by a 26-year-old woman from Ohio on November the 25th of 2019. Samantha Wyatt entered the building alone and slipped a note to one of the tellers. It read, "Take everything out of the top and bottom drawer and tell me to have a great day." And she left the bank with an undisclosed amount of money. A few hours later, local police released a picture of the suspect that was taken from the bank's surveillance footage. On Thanksgiving Day, the authorities received an anonymous tip from someone who believed Wyatt to have been the perpetrator of the robbery. Wyatt was brought in for an interview with investigators, during which she claimed not to have left the state of Ohio on the day of the crime. Butler County Sheriff's deputies subsequently executed a search warrant on Wyatt's vehicle and found 3 money bands commonly used by banks to wrap large bundles of cash. It was also revealed that Wyatt had searched for directions to the US bank on the day it was robbed, and she ultimately admitted to the crime on December the 9th. She told the authorities that she'd parked at a nearby church and removed her license plate prior to the robbery. After escaping with the cash, she reattached the plate and drove back to Ohio. She was taken into custody at the Dearborn County Law Enforcement Center and faced felony robbery charges. Number 3. Sarah Crosby. After robbing a bank in Laurel, Delaware, a young woman from North Carolina led police officers on a pursuit across state lines, while her 4-year-old son was in the car with her. Sarah Crosby, aged 21, carried out the robbery at the Bank of Delmarva on the morning of June the 30th of 2014. She reportedly handed one of the tellers a stick-up note that indicated she was armed, before fleeing with the cash in a white sedan, which was also carrying her young son. She was pursued by officers from multiple Delaware police departments as she made her way down Route 13 towards Maryland. Once the chase crossed into the neighboring state, law enforcement agencies from Maryland became involved in the high-speed pursuit as well. Crosby eventually ran over a set of spike strips that had been planted to intercept her, but continued to drive on her vehicle's rims until officers were able to bring her to a controlled stop on the Salisbury bypass. The weapon used in the robbery was found inside Crosby's car, as was the stolen money. Crosby faced charges in connection to the theft, as well as the ensuing chase, during which she collided with 3 other vehicles, including a Delmar police cruiser. Fortunately, her child wasn't harmed during the incident, and he was taken into protective custody following his mother's arrest. Number 2. Shelby Taylor Wise. After witnessing a woman taking out $75,000 in cash from her account, a bank teller from Houston, Texas, instructed 2 accomplices to target her in a violent robbery. 25-year-old Shelby Taylor Wise was an employee at Wallace State Bank at the time of the incident, which took place on August the 17th of 2018. Wise was stationed near the teller window at which a bank patron carried out a cash withdrawal for $75,000. Wise could be seen on the bank's surveillance tapes watching the woman intently as she conducted the transaction with another teller. At the exact moment the customer left the bank with the money, Wise pulled out her cell phone and appeared to send a text message. As police would later discover, the person who'd received the text was Wise's boyfriend, Trayvon Johnson. Wise was orchestrating a plot to rob the woman of the sizable sum of cash she had in her possession, which was meant for her family's gas station and check cashing business. The robbery was executed by Johnson and an accomplice, later identified as Davis Dowell Mitchell. The 2 perpetrators followed the woman to the gas station in Jersey Village and ambushed her. The gas station security cameras captured the ensuing struggle, during which the woman's husband ran out to help her fight off the 2 men. Both victims were badly beaten during the altercation, and Johnson could even be seen backing into them with his car. After the robbers absconded with the cash, the woman and her husband both required hospitalization for their injuries. Law enforcement was quick in tracking down Johnson and Mitchell, from whom they recovered the stolen money. Both men were arrested and charged with aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. Investigators also discovered that the car Johnson had used during the robbery was registered to a rental car agency and had been leased by Wise, who was also taken into custody and charged with felony robbery. Number 1. Elizabeth Jeannie Holt. Following a violent bank heist that resulted in the robber's death, during a shootout with law enforcement, a woman was arrested for aiding in the execution of the crime and obstructing the ensuing police investigation. The robbery in question took place at the Zions Bank in St. George, Utah, on September the 11th of 2014. Benjamin Schroff, aged 37, walked into the bank disguised in a blonde wig and fake beard. While armed with a shotgun and a revolver, he stole an unspecified amount of cash and subsequently took 2 female bank employees hostage. Schroff fled with the money and the 2 hostages in one of their cars and soon became involved in a high-speed chase with officers of the St. George Police Department. Schroff fired multiple rounds at his pursuers, ultimately hitting 3 patrol cars in the process. As the chase continued, local police encountered 38-year-old Elizabeth Jeannie Holt on the side of the road, near where the pursuit was taking place. She claimed to have been feeding the horses at the nearby corral, but officers asked her to leave the area. Schroff eventually jumped out of the stolen vehicle, allowing his 2 hostages to flee to safety. He hid in the weeds and bushes near the Virgin River, and law enforcement officials then released an emergency notification to all nearby residents, who were advised to stay indoors until the fugitive was caught. St. George police were finally able to locate Schroff after multiple hours of searching the area surrounding Washington Fields. A shootout ensued during which the robber was killed. The authorities would later discover that Holt was Schroff's girlfriend and that she'd tried to help him. She was actually near the location of the police chase in order to meet up with the bank robber and facilitate his escape with the money. Investigators also learned that Holt was carrying the same ammunition used by Schroff during the shootout and that she'd sent Schroff's teenage son to bury her rifle in the desert immediately after her first encounter with the police. Holt was charged with 4 counts of obstruction of justice and 1 count of aggravated robbery. She was consequently sentenced to 8 months at a correctional facility and was also ordered to perform 200 hours of community service. Thanks for watching. Would you rather rob a bank with your mom, or let her join you and your spouse on your honeymoon? Let us know in the comments section below.